failed, I guess.
I thought that was kind of what we were waiting for, and it was all on. Okay, the agenda is before you. I would just like to add one item under action items is to set the dates and times for the interview. Board members, I sent you an email yesterday, and that is a request from Dakota Leadership Solutions that we firm up the days and times. So I'd like to talk about that under an item C to set dates and times for interviews. With that, are there any other additions, corrections to the agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda with that one addition?
I'll make a motion.
Nagel moves to approve the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Schmidt seconds. Is there any discussion? Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion carries. Again, this is the regular meeting of the Oaks Public School Board, and we have visitors present here in the room. We have all board members. We have Superintendent Steinhoff, Principals Sell and Beta. We have Mr. Breitbach. I think that's him over there behind the mask, and Mr. Dobitz just joined us. I don't see anyone joining us by Zoom at this time, but some may join later. So welcome all. In your packet, there were a few thank yous under our public communications item. Thank yous from Carrying Forward and Ann Zedeca for especially for including the substitutes in the appreciation gift from the district at the holidays. So thank you for that. Anything else? April? No. Mr. Hackett looks like has joined us as well. All right, for action items, thank you board members for getting me your evaluations of Superintendent Steinhoff. You should have seen that in your packet or prior to that for your review, and then again in your packet. I did meet with Dr. Steinhoff regarding the review. A couple of things I would just like to highlight is that, you know, I like to read the comments, and it's interesting that sometimes the comments seem to not conflict, but they, well, yeah, I mean, there's just different perceptions of the same things. For example, relationship with students and parents. There was a comment that said Dr. Steinhoff has worked well with parents, and another that said Craig needs to work on follow through with parents. And they may not be directly conflicting, but just a different perspective and may reflect the different experience by different board members, and in that case, different parents with different concerns. Are there any comments that any board member would like to bring forward that they thought that they disagreed with, or that just anything you would like to mention? Craig, anything that you took away from this?
I appreciate you making comments, because that's really where I get help in terms of knowing. It's one thing to get a number, but then knowing what the number means. So I appreciate that, and I've appreciated that the entire time. I feel as though the way you're doing the evaluation of superintendents leads to growth and leads to an easy opportunity for growth because of how you explain it. So thank you, I appreciate that.
So then, as a reminder, we are not to adopt or approve an overall rating, but we are to approve a rating in each of the 5 areas that we evaluated. No board member indicated a rating of unsatisfactory for any of these areas. And so if there's no objection, I would entertain a motion that the board approve the evaluation with a satisfactory rating of Superintendent Steinhoff in each of the 5 areas which we evaluated this spring.
I would make that motion.
Schmitz moves to approve the evaluation with a satisfactory rating in each of the 5 areas. Is there a second? Nagel seconds. With that, is there any discussion? Any discussion? Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion carries and the evaluation is approved. Next is item B, recognition of negotiating unit. In your packet, there was a memo with a highlighted section. This continues the process of recognizing the negotiating unit for our teaching staff. And if I'm not mistaken, what we need to do is approve a motion with the highlighted language on item A, beginning with the Oaks School Board has investigated. Do we need to include all of that in the motion? Or do we just need to, go ahead, April, thank you.
So, yep, it has to say, the motion is after investigating the petition filed by the Oaks Education Association requesting that the association be recognized as a representative organization for the negotiating unit. It has been determined that the Oaks Education Association does represent a majority of the teachers with the unit. The board recognizes the Oaks Education Association as representative organization for a minimum of 1 year beginning July 1st, 2021. And they are the majority of our teachers. So I just need, that's the motion.
Okay, so with a very slight change of wording at the very beginning, just to make it motion-like, I guess. That is the motion which April stated. So I would entertain that motion from a board member, please.
I would make that motion,
Nagel makes that
but
motion.
I'm not gonna repeat it.
Thank you. I think it was very clear and it's in our packet. So is there a second?
I'll second it.
Rosendahl seconds that motion. Is there any discussion? Any discussion, clarification, questions? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion carries. And so therefore we have approved OEA as the negotiating unit today, which is 3/9 of 21. So therefore negotiations must officially begin within 30 days, which would be 4/8 of 21. Okay, and our negotiating team is Bill and Sheila. And we don't know who the negotiating team is at this time for OEA. Greg Dobitz, you're on your own this year? No. No, Greg and yet to be determined. Okay, thank you. And we don't know whether the legislature will be done by that time, whether we'll know where we're at with funding. So, but we do need to officially have a meeting and officially kick things off. So. All righty. And does that happen to be the date of our next board meeting? Or no, it is not. It's not. Okay. All right. Now for the special or the additional item on the agenda, the setting the dates and times of our interviews for superintendent. Emailed to you yesterday a timeline, which is really was no different than what we had before, just had some more specifics with regard to when we'll see. Well, I'll go through that quickly. The public survey closes next Friday, this coming Friday, the 12th. The team will compile results and provide those results to the board members next week by Friday. The deadline for applicants is Friday, March the 26th. Applicant files will be shared with the board shortly after the 26th, as soon as possible that the team can get them compiled. And a reminder to board members that there are already in excess of what I think it might be 4 that is would not be confidential, but we have in excess of that. So when we see the applicant packets, those are confidential and should not be revealed either before or after decision of finalists. The special board meeting with Dakota leadership is scheduled for Tuesday, March the 30th. And we will review all the applicants with them. They will make recommendations, but it's still entirely up to the board who we interview and how many. And finally, our interviews we had scheduled for 6th, 7th, and 8th. And DLS would like us all to agree on which days and times we will interview. They suggest allowing 2 hours per interview, and I believe they've talked to Craig about having some outside, doing some touring and question answering and so on outside, so we can focus on the interviews. I did notice yesterday, so our 6th, 7th, and 8th is a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Our school calendar shows we do not have school on Monday or Tuesday. So I'm not sure how you feel about having candidates here on a non-school day. They won't see us in action, so to speak, but those were the days that we selected. What are your thoughts? I'm very flexible, much more flexible than some of you. So.
I kind of like the idea of having school session when they're here.
Okay.
Versus not.
Let's see. I would agree with school in session.
Okay.
I can do any time that week, so it doesn't-
All right. So I'm hearing that we're preferring the 7th and 8th. Are you, so they're suggesting we allow 2 hours. So we like mornings. Is 8 a.m. too early to expect a candidate to be here who may be traveling from far away? You want to do an 8:10, 9:11, 1:03, 10:01. What are your thoughts?
How many we're gonna interview? Whatever.
Well, I don't
That's
think we
it.
know that. I would say we should allow a minimum of 4. And if we have, if we have a 5th, we would want to allow for that.
And just for your awareness, I guess Dr. Duxer talked to me about the tours, and if his thought was an hour and a half. And we talked about, Dave's not back here. We talked about doing something similar as what we've done before, where you have transportation. We said we could probably use 2A, that smaller bus, and then take their families, and then I would give them the tour of the school. I would take them to the Career Tech Center. Randall would give them a tour of the Career Technology Center. And then after that, having either chamber director or OEI director possibly give a short tour, town wise, and then bring them back. So that's the tentative plan, which would follow suit to what I think you did last time, and maybe even the time before with candidates, with transporting them around in one bus.
I prefer the morning, but I don't know if that's feasible for candidates.
Well, I think if they want to interview with us, they'll have to make that happen. If they're coming from a distance, they may drive somewhere and stay in Valley City or stay here, whatever. Is 8 a.m., I mean, I don't think we should start at 7 a.m.
No, I don't either.
Is 8 a.m. too early? So
I don't think
8 and 10 on both days. And then that would allow for an early afternoon interview on either day if we find it necessary. Okay. I don't know that I need a motion, but so all know we're blocking off April. That would be Wednesday, the 7th and 8th, with 2 interviews, two slots in the morning at say 8 and 10 a.m. And I mean, we could have some flexibility so that, a candidate could have we could have a 12:30 or 1 o'clock in either afternoon. And then we're going to have to also have an after the last interview board meeting for the discussion. So you're pretty much blocking off certainly the full morning for Wednesday and Thursday, and probably a Thursday afternoon as well. Fair enough? April, does that fit for you?
Yep, I can make that work.
Good. All right, that will take care of that item then. Okay, for school policy review today, April and I are kind of getting a routine on this, and I hope it's going to be helpful. So we're going to start with second readings. We have policy FDD, education of pregnant and parenting students, which is new and it's required. FDE, education of special education and disabled students, required, and it's some amendments. FDH is students in foster care. It's also required, and it is a new policy to us. And bus conduct is FFC. That is recommended. We've had it for some time. These are second readings, which we reviewed last month. The FFC, bus conduct, we had an exhibit or some guidelines that we had distributed it some years ago, and I had asked that be vetted against the language and make sure that we match what the policy says. Was that done, April or Greg?
Yep, I did that along, it was a board regulation and administrative regulation. So
Okay.
they were all compiled together and compared.
Okay, so with that, I'm seeking a motion to approve these four policies as second reading and final adoption. Is there a motion to approve these?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Nagel moves to approve the second reading of these four policies. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thorpe seconds. All right, are there any discussion, questions, concerns about these for final adoption? Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion carries. Okay, the next five are first readings. They include student prayer during non-instructional time, student interviews, interrogations, and custody by school resource officers and outside authorities, student handbooks, student publications and freedom of expression, and education of homeschooled students. Could I have a motion for adoption of a first reading of these policies, and then I'll take questions.
I'll make a motion for the first reading.
Rosendahl moves to approve a first reading of these policies. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thorpe seconds. On F, on the FGBV student prayer includes language that says, and shall be delineated in administrative regulations. Do we have, and I know we don't approve of administrative regulations, but do they exist or are they under development? Is this new? No, this is something. So that language is already, that language is being added. So that would suggest that we do need to, that administrators do need to adopt regulations, even though we don't need.
Yeah. April, was there an AR that came with that one?
That's what I'm looking up right now. It was FGBB.
Yes.
No, but I'll put it on my list to add.
Okay.
Again, this is just a first reading. So we can continue to ask questions throughout the month and next month if we adopt final adoption. But I think we should spend a little time with FDA, education of homeschooled students. We're adding language here related to whether or not we would award diplomas to any homeschooled students. And the language we're adding says that we shall not award diplomas to homeschooled students, but they must enroll full-time in regular Oaks Public School District educational programs and complete all the necessary requirements. And the question I jotted down is if a student was homeschooled from kindergarten through grade 11, and then they decide they want to get a diploma and they enroll as a first or second semester senior, is that sufficient?
Well, their transcript would be reviewed, and this has been done before, and in terms of, they would review what their transcript was, and we would have the authority as the admin to say, well, this class counts, this one doesn't, you're gonna need to take this or this, to be able to meet our minimum graduation requirements.
All right, any other questions on that policy or any of those 5, 6 that we're looking at a first reading? All right, any more questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting a first reading of these 6 policies, say aye. Those opposed say no. The motion carries. We have before us policy FAB, school assignments. Now, this one, the last time when I looked at it, I wondered why we even need it, because it refers to changing schools within the district. For example, if we were the Fargo School Board and we had 20 or whatever elementary schools, changing elementary schools. We only have one and we only have one high school. I suggested I didn't think we needed it. I think our administrators concurred with that. The language that they're suggesting, that I assume School Boards Association is suggesting to be added, refers to extracurricular eligibility, but that would, again, I think only apply if we're in Fargo and you're transferring from to South or something, which does not apply to us. Concur?
Right. We deal with district reassignments of open enrollment or non-tuition agreements, but we don't have more than one school, so there's not options for kids to pick from.
Okay, so it doesn't make sense for us to have this policy. It is only a recommended policy, but I don't think it would be recommended for us because it doesn't apply. So I believe we can rescind in one reading, correct, April?
That is correct. We just need one motion and one reading.
Okay, so I would entertain a motion to rescind policy FAB, school assignments.
I'll make a motion to rescind that.
Thorpe moves to rescind FAB. Is there a second?
Second.
Schmidt seconds. Any further questions, discussion, concerns on FAB? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion carries. All right, board regulation to DKBB. I believe last month we did final approval of DKBB, which is the authority to grant release from a contract. That policy says that we should have or must have an board regulation identifying what the penalties could be in the event of granting release from a contract. And I think if I heard April correctly, when she sent in that one to be added to our policies, they said, well, we can't add this yet because it has to have a regulation going with it. So we have to have the specific guidance. And I believe that Craig and April did research and gathered information from other districts, and this is what they have put before us for our consideration. Any comments, April or Craig?
I would just say, in going through this and in my previous experience, we've not had one of these in Oaks before. This one, it's tied to a percentage, and the largest percentage is 10%. So if you're thinking about a first year teacher, we're talking, you know, if they leave on or after August 1st, we're looking at a $4,100 liquidated damages for release of the contract. I can tell you that at the Career Technology Center, that number was quite a bit higher. So this is when April and I went through it, we picked one, we looked through a number of them and picked this as a starting point, but that doesn't mean that that's what you need to stick with. If you want to change the percentages, if you think that's too low, too high, you can adjust those as you see fit. But obviously, the later it is, the more the penalty.
And this regulation does allow the board to waive, whoops, it says waive WAVE instead of waive WAIVE in the,
I'll fix that.
thank you. We can waive it. We can waive them goodbye. Yeah, we would have the option to reduce, I suppose, or waive it altogether if we deem that the reasons in the situation merit that. Any other discussion?
And this is based on just a cash salary, not any other side benefits.
It would be the contracted salary. So the way I read this is it would be based on their contracted salary of cash, not of benefits. April, do you have the same interpretation?
Yeah, because basically their contract would end and their benefits would end once we stop paying them that 30 days after. So it's not like they'd be eligible for benefits for the entire year for their contract.
But the penalty would not, it would only include the percentage would be calculated on the cash salary and
Yeah.
not to include, specifically not to include the extracurricular salary if they had a coaching salary.
Right, that was my question. That
Oh, yep. Yeah, it would just,
TFR, all that stuff. And so it's just the cash salary.
Easy to calculate then.
I wouldn't mind seeing that August 1st hire myself. It really puts the district to the bench of somebody outside of the contract at that point.
I would agree with that.
Okay. I've forgotten, did I get a motion to approve this or have we not? Do not have to have an amendment? We can, I don't think I got a motion, did I? Okay, does anyone have, what I'm hearing is at least a couple board members think 10% on or after August 1st may not be enough. And again, knowing that we could waive, reduce or eliminate it if the situation, if we believe, the board believes that it's merited. Is there a proposal of a higher percentage or a dollar amount?
Or the higher ones that you saw.
I'm gonna pass that question to April. She had all the data. April, do you remember what some of the higher ones were specifically near the end of that time frame?
I think most of them are pretty generalized. Yeah. 10%.
The one I was thinking of is the Career Technology Center. For some reason, I thought that was, well, I think they changed it. I think it was 15,000 was the highest on that. Right.
I'd have to go through my emails again and find them all because I only have the one that we agreed on. I must have tossed the rest of them. So I can find it and have it ready. I can send it out for before the next board meeting if we want to table this.
We don't have to act on this if we,
I'd like to table it. I really think we need to.
do you suggest we move to table it or do we just agree that we'll consider it next month? Let's just consider it next month.
Okay.
All right, for existing policy review, as I sent a memo and it was included in your packet, I guess, you know, we've undertaken this sort of systematic effort to evaluate and study some of the factors or indicators that we had hoped to bring together into a document to measure student achievement each year. And I visited with Craig about it earlier, well, last week when we talked about the agenda. We kind of agreed that we were spinning our wheels on this, and we, we've studied a number of measures, and I think I asked Craig since then, let's just put together some data for the board to look at, particularly with regard to the indicators we've already studied and others that might be easy to gather. And we'll use that for a springboard to further discussion, particularly with our new superintendent. So with that, we'll continue working on this with the guidance of our new administrator. All right. Then, moving on to our reports. I think we should have Mr. Hack with us, it looks like. You are first. And before you start, I have a question for you. I'm just wondering why we're seeing initials instead of names of kids this month.
That's what I put on all the other ones. I'll be honest, I just didn't know if I was supposed to identify kids by name, being as we didn't do that on social media and stuff like that. So I just did initials, but I can do names too if that's within our policy too.
I'd like to talk about that policy sometime of the names on social media, particularly with regard to our activities students, because it looks kind of silly to me when we put a picture of a student that's accomplished something wonderful and we don't, and I believe that there are reasons why we do that so as not to make our students identifiable to potential predators on social media. On the other hand, when they've agreed to be in activities, they're already being publicized in many ways. So I'd like to visit that policy or procedure sometime in the future. But with that, go ahead. And I think it's fine for you to say their names.
Okay, so I'll just kind of give you the highlights. You can read through some of that. I don't need to go through line by line with it. But music coming up, we have a couple events. Large group is going to be on March 16th in Oaks, and then ELO we're also hosting in Oaks this year on the 30th. So we have Isabel Herring and Caden Christensen that were selected to the All-State Choir. So that was pretty exciting for them. Both elementary basketballs. So if you remember in the fall, we ended up moving both the seasons to the spring here, just due to not having teams available to play essentially. So both the elementary girls and boys teams are currently ongoing, and both of them this year have 6 games, plus we were able to get 1 tournament for them to attend as well. So we were lucky enough to pick up some games there for them so that they didn't lose everything that they kind of had planned for the fall here. Archery we've talked about previously, but there's a large amount of participants there, and they're doing everything virtually this year, so no on-site. State wrestling, we had 3 place winners this year. We had Mark Sire, who placed 3rd, Cody Meal placed 4th, and then Jacob Henkel placed 5th. So that concluded, about a week and a half ago now. So congratulations to them as well. We had basketball, at the time of submission, this was before we played last night. So obviously they won last night. So we are playing the 7:30 game in the semifinals tonight. In boys basketball, we had 3 all-district selections in Garrett Meal, Steele Hansen, and Ashton Biesterfeld. Girls season wrapped up. We also had a couple all-district selections there as well in Sadie Hansen and Lake and Roney. And then Sadie was also named the District 5 Senior Athlete of the Year this year. So that's kind of, a combination of the ones that have wrapped up and a couple that are still ongoing here. Baseball is coming up. Their first game is April 6th. They're taking on Enderlin right away. We've also got track that kicked off. I talked to the track coaches. We're at about 80 kids, it sounds like, but they do anticipate more joining as some of our other events are wrapping up here for the winter season. So along with that, we're also hosting a total of 4 track meets this year in Oaks. So we have 2 junior high meets that are scheduled for April 26th and May 13th. And then we're also hosting 2 varsity meets, which will be May 3rd and May 15th this year down at the track. So we're excited to get those back and to have track meets in Oaks again. So And then our other activity that's kicking off here is golf. I talked to Miss Sheeler about a week and a half ago, and she's hoping that if numbers hold, we'll have enough for full varsity teams of both boys and girls this year. So that would be exciting for them to have. And then also girls golf season next year, a little bit of a season shift. They're moving to the fall season to run concurrently with volleyball next year.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Hack? Good to see things are busy. All right, if no questions, let's move on then to the principal's reports. And I think we were going to try to keep these as brief as we can. So if there's anything you really want to highlight other than what was written or emphasize what was.
Okay, I like you said, she said I gave you guys all the data. If you have any questions on that, one thing I need to tell you, because this will be out today, we did have close contact yesterday, and I think we ended up sending home 9 or 10 kids. It was a unique circumstance. It went all the way back to last Tuesday, so we had to go through four days to close contact kids, and they're just out till Monday. Things changed so much with the CDC. Now it's just 10 days of, I don't understand the whole, it changes so much for us. But anyway, so I'm sure you'll hear that we did have some close contacts yesterday, and knock on wood, that's been our first close contact since the very first day of coming back. So we've done pretty well with January, February, March, but most of our kids still wear masks. So
Have they changed the distancing rules at all?
no, it's still 6 feet and within 15 minutes or whatever. Now they said yesterday, though, once you have your vaccines, then you don't have to social distance. But we didn't knock any teachers
As long as the
out.
other person has theirs.
Yeah,
But Nevada's only 3 feet.
yeah, I don't know.
That's why I was asking if they've changed it.
Yeah, it's great, so we do what we have to do. But anyways, I'm sure you'll hear about that day that we had close contact yesterday. First time, but other than that, unless you have any questions.
I guess I'd like to hear, I had been told, I don't remember where, but that your data that you've shared with us is like the best data you've ever seen, which I think is remarkable in the face of what our school year has looked like. Can you lead us through the highlights of that?
Yeah, so you can see that it's amazing how much we have increased. We had a drop in some reading scores. You see that sometimes in this midwinter. And there's all sorts of biological reasons with our junior high. But our kids have regained remarkable from when they came back in the fall. So 5 years ago, when we wrote our school-wide Title I plan, our data pointed out that our kids that were at the top end, our high achievers, were not maintaining high achievement. They were dropping down. So we restructured things that we did in the elementary, and we tried to focus on making sure that we were not just extending our kids at the top, that we were helping them to move farther forward. And this is the first time that we have had high growth, and we can measure that on STAR. There's some big algorithm that STAR does, and then they compare it to kids across the nation. I think I've told you guys about this before. So I'm compared to kids that are at my level, my age, and then they measure the growth on that, and they give us a certain marker for that growth. So Mrs. Kelly's 4th grade reading class, every one of her kids, and she has the kids that are accelerated, every one of her kids in her class had high growth and high proficiency. Every one of them in her class, and her class is 23, I think, it's a pretty high number. And then Mr. Lynch's math group, that is their grade level, the grade level kiddos, all had high growth for 4th grade and 5th grade. We've never had high growth, and that's always been our goal, right? We know kids have different levels of skills, but that growth piece is so important to us, that those kids can make the growth that we expect of ourselves and to be able to give to them. And so first time ever, and there was 3 classes that had it. So it was really cool to be able to share that with everybody, because that is our goal. And I really hope that this carries forward for us, because if anything, that's the piece that we need to get each of our kids.
Questions?
I guess, am I just not reading this chart right? Like for the reading in the 6th grade, if we had, you're saying they had growth, but looks to me like.
Right, okay, so
Each year.
this is proficiency. So this is proficiency for our 6th graders. So, in the fall, this is problematic, and the teachers know that. I mean, they look at the data really closely. This is where their proficiency level was, and then this is winter, and then this is late winter. So we do it 4 times in the elementary. So this is just their proficiency. So you can have low proficiency and have high growth, because, you know, if I'm comparing apples to apples, I'll be able to have high growth, because if we are achieving at the same level, you know, we want our kids to grow at a certain rate. So then this sheet is the one that has our growth. So this is the percentage of kids that had high growth or net expected growth rates.
I think the easiest way to think about growth is there's a amount that they want the kids to be able to grow in a certain year, and so that's measured. And then the other side is proficiency, which is what you typically think about in terms of, are they proficient in it, do they know it or not? But that other piece of growth, which is really powerful when you have kids that have been proficient probably forever. The hard part is, how do you get a year's worth of growth on top of them? Because they have to go that much, you know, they have to go that much further above what proficiency is to be able to have that year's worth of growth. And I personally think that when your staff are doing what you're doing with differentiation to personalized learning is leading to that success in the growth. So.
If I could re-ask maybe the question that Robert asked. If I'm looking at the math proficiency, I'm seeing the green bar, which is late winter, is higher than the blue bar in every grade level as well as in total. So to me, that's growth. If you sort of ignore the red bar in the middle, it shows where they tested last fall and where they tested most recently. If we look at reading proficiency in every grade level, the green is higher than the blue, except when we get to the 6th grade. The blue is higher and the red is middle. And so something happened there, but every other grade is showing increased proficiency from fall to late winter.
Yeah, so the teachers are looking at that data. We have some kids that, I mean, it's age 2. They test in about 10 minutes, you know, so things like that affect their proficiency levels too. So there's all sorts of pieces that go into that, but the teachers look at that, they take that data very seriously, they plan for it, they look at individuals, they meet with individuals, they set goals. Now that we're moving more and more towards individualized, my teachers can tell you just about every kid, what skills they can do, what standards they have mastered, what areas we need to work on. I mean, they know that whole entire picture. And this is just this is our most transparent piece of data because it's historical. We have data from all over, lots of kids, not just North Dakota, but we have other pieces of data that we use too, you know, that can tell us like their standards that they've mastered in class. The teachers can tell you things like that from their class. So we look at that whole picture. But this is the most transparent piece of data. This is the most consistent piece of data that we have, and then it's measured across.
Was that more clear on your question, Robert?
Yeah, I just wanted.
And a test score is not the whole world. I mean, we have lots of other things obviously that we need to consider, but.
We had a couple of 6th graders that normally score in the 90th percentile, but they took about 10 minutes to take a test and dropped down into the 60th percentile. You know, and that's just one test. And it's an outlier, and our teachers know that, but of course that's going to show up on the data, right? That's going to show up for that one piece of data at that one point in time. But if you look at historical, which we do, we don't make decisions on that one piece of data. 5 years ago, we made that mistake. We would look at that one piece of data and we were making knee-jerk reactions to it. But now we look at the historical. We'll look at 3 tests in a row and see, you know, what the trend is. When we'll throw out those outliers because, again, it's a snapshot at one point in time.
Okay, any other questions for Mrs. Stell? If not, let's have a brief highlight report from Mr. Beta.
I guess if I sent you guys the reports, you can see we had a lot of students to recognize from Students of the Month, our academic, Olympic team, state superintendent, student cabinet, and Lego robotics and qualified for states. We had a lot of students with some achievements. Math counts I just received word that Kenton Budke did qualify for states, so he'll have another assessment and move forward to the state math counts competition coming up here, I think, in a week or 2. I guess the only thing I'd really like to highlight is class registration and parent teacher conferences. So you're receiving information On the 18th of all the classes, we're gonna offer OHS, which includes the center, other classes, dual credit classes, things like that. And then what we're gonna do is allow time then for the parents to receive that information with their students, then have our students register their April 14th through 16th. Online like we did last year, and that worked really well. The difference in time is allow time for the parents to talk to the students about the classes they want, but also give opportunities when it comes to parent-teacher conferences there on the 23rd. Presume that would be a conversation that we can have with myself and Mrs. Brecker. They have questions about what classes they should take, scholarship, things like that. The last thing I have there is at 7 o'clock on that day, Mr. Brecker and I are going to meet with the 8th graders and parents, and just give a discussion about 9th grade expectations, how important 9th grade year is, especially to scholarship information, but also now that it's more credit, whereas 8th grade it's not. So trying to set the stage for those kids to get on the same pathway and get parents on board with us as far as what expectations are and there's transparency. So I'm gonna start that at 7 o'clock.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Beta? All right, let's move on to superintendent's report.
The first thing are the 212 shout outs, and this month I have 2. Mr. K, thank you for making physical education something the kids look forward to. You're an awesome educator and role model for the students of OES. So thank you to Mr. K. And the next one is submitted by Shannon Day. Shout out to Mr. Sean Sagert. He took extra time Friday after school to work with Sydney shooting archery. He was informative, offering encouragement, and helped bring her confidence back. Thank you, Sean. So congratulations to both of our physical education teachers. The next is the logo task force. Larry has graciously taken the lead on the logo task force because I've not been very diligent in getting that progress moving forward. And so he's taking the lead on that. I'll still be part of it. And we'll be hopefully moving along quickly. What we're finding is there's more and more cases of people that are asking, well, we want to do this, but we need a new logo. We want to do this, we need a new logo. And if because of those questions, then we don't have the new logo picked, it's delaying other areas that people want to do. So that's going to start here ASAP. And then in addition to that, we'll also talk about game environment in all of our settings and what can be adapted and changed. And then I believe what will happen is we'll bring a recommendation back from that task force to you, and you'll be asking for the board for resources to be able to make those things happen. So that's in progress, and Larry, thank you to him for taking over on that. And the last piece is a Pcbl progress report, and Brandon, Anna, Greg, and I have a short PowerPoint presentation that we're going to share. I understand April has the presentation, and so she can pull it up. Excellent. And once she gets that main slide, then I'll just give you a little briefing. This year we've struggled to put out a lot of social media because of COVID. We've not wanted to have pictures of our kids, with or without masks or too close together, all those different things. And so we've not done a lot of promotion of what's been happening with Pcbl specifically at the school district. And I think that that's not been true of what's actually happening, because in my opinion, we've made as much movement, if not more, than in any year that we've had up to those points, but we've really not presented that well to you. And so today is to talk about some progress that we've made as a school district together. So Greg, do you want to?
Yeah,
start?
I'll just kick it off. We picked I think 5 things.
Excuse me. I'm going to ask you, can you go somewhere where you can be seen by the camera so everybody is, and I should ask the rest of the principals to do that as well, but sorry.
So we just picked a few short things that we'll talk about. Each of us will kind of highlight some things, and there's some things that you'll see on the screen there. But these are kind of the heavy hitters or things that are happening, daily in our classrooms. So Brandon, there's that over there. So the camera can see me.
The first one you'll see up there is instructional rounds. I'm giving you just some appetizers so we can move through this. Basically, we're having educators see other educators, and that may seem like not that crazy of a plan, but what's really happening is that's occurring both in the same departments, but also across the building. So educators are going and seeing one another, and some strategies they're implementing in personalized learning, and then getting a chance to get feedback to that educator and kind of like a debrief. And if you can look at some of the things, 17 educators have completed one round since December. We got 3 scheduled this week, and then Mr. Govitz covers observing teachers' classes while they observe, so they can take time out of their classroom if their preps don't line up to visit other teachers. I know Alicia, I think this week or last week went to Mrs. Bulbury. They sit down and they get takeaways of like, hey, what's 1 or 2 things you can take away from this person's class that you can use in your own? So it's sharing a lot of the expertise we have here in the building, which normally you don't get a chance to see. So that's been extremely effective.
Okay, so I'm up for progressions, and progressions are a transparent hierarchy or description of knowledge that kids need in the as they work themselves through skills, and they're aligned with priority standards that our PCBL groups had done earlier, in the last couple of years. So we've had some work nights that we brought in teachers that are able to come. We paid the teachers. We've been working on them. It's amazing. The teachers, I think we paid them for an hour or 2, but the teachers stay for 3 or 4 hours because they really do value the progressions. And there's some pictures of them there in the different classrooms. It looks different in 1st grade than it looks in 6th grade. But to have those in place really helps us stay aligned.
You go to the next one, April.
The next one's mine is growth mindset, and there are some pictures there of habits of mind. There's the picture there of the power of yet, and then also the change your brain to be colorful versus a white brain, and you'll see that language is used far more probably in the lower grades. I mean, Carly and Carter will talk to me about, yeah, that's a white brain comment, and so I'll have to change my comment to see the other side, but the definition of a mindset or, attitudes held by someone, and this is one of the things that came to me through Lindsay, California, was that we really have to make sure that our mindset is a growth mindset, not a fixed one. So a fixed mindset means that a person sees intelligence and, creative ability as a static, and it can't be changed. So you are what you are, that's what you are, you're never going to change. That's a fixed mindset view. A growth mindset sees failure as a springboard for growth and stretching our existing abilities. And it's really, intriguing about the power of yet. You can't do it yet. But all of the staff at OPS went through growth mindset training this year. Mr. Beta and his committee was in charge of growth mindset, and they found a program, it was 4 hours through I think it was mindset.com, somewhere there. Mindset Maker. And all of our staff did that, and we compensated them to their time. So if they were hourly employees, they went through that training. If they were certified employees, then they got $25 an hour. That dollar amount was also covered by grant dollars that we've received through the Bush Foundation. But every one of our staff, whether it's custodians or lunch staff or paras or superintendent or counselors or admin or teachers, have all gone through the growth mindset training.
Excuse me. The next thing is we've created a glossary document of PCBL terms. There's 42 terms on the document. It was just kind of wrapped up late February here, and we've got just a couple of things to finish off, and then it's going to go live on our website. It's something that all the stakeholders of OPS hopefully will be able to see and use. And I guess a question for you guys is, in the past 3 years or 2 years since you guys have been on the board, have you noticed a shift in language? And if you haven't yet, hopefully with the creation of this document and all of the different stakeholders using that you'll notice a shift in language. And you can go to the last one there, April. The last one is just kind of my role. So the funding there, you can see that this year's $50,000 has already been received from the Bush Foundation and the Lindsay Partnership. Next year's $50,000 amount has already been committed to. And then some of the things that I've been doing, facilitating instructional rounds. So I will be involved in the subbing when Alicia goes to visit Mrs. Bolt last week. I went to taught second grade for 45 minutes. Excuse me. And then I'm also involved in their debrief. So I'm helping them talk through things they like, things they didn't like, things they might be able to use, and things like that. We've started something called the problem of practice. Last week, one of our high school teachers came forward and said, hey, I'm having a problem with this. What are some solutions? So we kind of brainstormed some solutions for her, and we're going to keep that ongoing every couple of weeks, where our educators just get together and have professional, time to talk about problems and solutions in their classrooms. I'm having one-on-one meetings with staff. I'm doing observations and giving feedback. I'm working on the action planning committees. I've been working heavily on those, during the convenings and stuff like that, and also helping plan the early out professional learning opportunities that we have.
And I would just close and say that, the principals and Greg and I meet on a regular basis too, and it's the four of us that collaborate on all of our PCBL work. We're also involved with transformation design, and we're doing a problem of practice with them. And our problem of practice is how do we better see through the same lens what success looks like for all of our students K through 12, so that we have an idea what it is, and we want to incorporate our report to the graduate on that. And so that's our problem of practice that we're working with through transformation design. Transformation design has also brought funding to the school. We just received a $10,000 grant from them last week. And so the extra work that's happening and the extra work that's being done is also generating revenue for the district. And I really believe that the power of our meetings, the four of us, will be the power for the next superintendent to be able to either catch up or start right off. You may find a superintendent that is just as knowledgeable as I am, or better on PCBL, or you may find one that just hasn't been involved with that as much. I'm confident because of the way that we meet and collaborate, the next superintendent's going to be able to jump on board and keep going and be seamless, much like it was seamless when Randall took over for me at the Career Tech Center and has been rolling ever since. So questions you have for us on PCBL in general?
Robert, you looked like you had a question.
Well,
There was
yeah,
a big
just,
question mark over your head.
I got lots of questions I want to ask, so. I guess I'm still trying to gauge how the high school is at compared to the elementary.
We've made a lot of strides in the past 2 months. Mr. Beta and myself have been very purposeful on things that we're doing. We've made two very, I think, achievable goals for our senior high, junior high staff. We've worked with KnowledgeWorks to develop some progressions for our teachers to understand where they're at and where they need to go. We're using PLC time that's built into their schedules to really focus on that. I think some of the things you may not necessarily hear about or know about, but one of those things is being really intentional with learning targets. Speaking to the kids about not just, a lot of times you'll go into a room and see kids working and you'll say, hey, what are you working on? Or what are you learning? And they'll tell you what they're working on, the task they're doing. But we want to make sure that we're being intentional about the learning part of it, not the task, so that the kids are understanding what they're learning and stuff like that. The other thing is we're really focusing on the environment and how we're grouping kids, being intentional about, hey, these kids need a little bit extra time, so we're going to let other kids work together or work on their own so that the teacher can really focus on the time with those kids.
And how about the actual time that the teachers are with the students, high school versus elementary? Does you think that's equal? With kids in elementary school, or just always, they're probably together more often with the teachers of the classes that they have. Is that flowing the same? I mean, is it?
It's an
different?
it's interesting now. So I've seen it over there and now I'm seeing it a lot over here. Excuse me, over here too. You know, obviously K-6, you have to have more adult supervision, right? Because they're younger and things like that. Kids over here can be on their own a little bit more. I think our kids seek out our teachers quite a bit on their free time. You know, being in the high school working lounge there, where the teachers' kind of offices are, you might say, kids are coming in and out of there a lot, which I never saw when I was over there in the elementary. It's really interesting to see that. You know, I think some of the things with Flex Mod, a lot of the negatives that were brought forth were addressed in the kind of the Flex Mod 2.0 that we started this year. I think our teachers are with our students more. They're teaching, I don't know, longer mods, I guess. I don't know how you.
It's comparable. So the difference, one thing we can't replicate from elementary to high school is I don't get 2 hours to work with the English or math departments, you know, like they do. So that's something that we can't replicate. So all my teachers are teaching.
Why not?
Because if you do 7th, 8th grade and you do 2 hours each group, I only have one teacher that can do that, and they have 2 for math. I don't have enough time in the day to give 2 hours per subject area, and they have to be highly qualified in that content area. So I only get them for about an hour a day is what they're close to it, 240 minutes. So we're having conversations about what next year looks like with the schedule. You know, we've kind of been beating that thing with like a dead horse, but I mean, it's still something we got to talk about. There's concerns on the current schedule and needs that we have moving forward, such as right now we accelerate 8th grade kids into algebra. Those kids then as freshmen will have to take pathways to allow that. Our current schedule doesn't allow that, so we got to modify there. Any change in staff that we might have this spring would be a reason to relook at the schedule, especially if we lose a couple staff and not be able to hire both those positions and have to go down to one of those positions. Those type of things come up for schedule. But those are some of the things that Ann and I are talking about. How do we bridge that gap? Because some of the systems that are over there can't be replicated in my building due to not only time but staff. Those are concerns we can't replicate. I guess we could replicate, but you'd have to extend the workday to like 10 hours. So I don't know how do we do that.
But you're saying that you think longer classes would be better than shorter classes?
I'm not saying that longer classes are better than shorter classes. I think what you're doing during that class time is most important. And that's some of the shifts we're definitely making. Greg talked, we did two big markers this year. The markers are, hey, all the goals are already posted. So every classroom you walk into, the learning targets or what the kids are learning is on the board. Now the conversation is shifting to that has to be clearly addressed to every single student so they know exactly why they're doing this instead of just what they're working on. The second one is allowing ELA, math, and science when they're teaching to plan a time where those kids get to decide based on this assessment or what we did yesterday, do I need a mini lesson with the teacher? Do I got a good enough grasp that I can work on my own? Or am I pretty close to getting it, but I need help and I'm going to partner up with a person? And allowing that time to move in the classroom, which is much different in the high school setting compared to the elementary. And that's the type of shifts. One thing we've talked about too is where our goal here is to personalize learning, right? And I think it'd be I don't think it'd be a great decision for us to say that we want what the elementary looks like to be the exact same thing the high school is like, because we don't have the same kids, different things are occurring in different classes and things like that. So we need to personalize it for the high school as well. And those are some things we're working on right now with the help of Mr. Govitz and in conversations with Mr. Steinoff and Mrs. Sell. That's how we're moving the needle in high school. So, but definitely conversations we're having moving into next year.
Any other questions? I could address, there was a comment in my evaluation about me not providing the direction of KnowledgeWorks. And I believe what that comment is referring to is KnowledgeWorks had information on their website about fighting privilege and fighting white supremacy across the nation. And we talked to them about that and said, We don't believe that that's an issue we have currently in our district that we need to work with. We're here for personalized learning. Our equity issue, in our opinion, is the difference in the kids from the kids that have a lot of support, resources, have mom and dad at home, have technology, have everything, versus the kids, some kids that don't have any of those supports. We gotta make sure that we're providing equitable services to those kids, for both ranges. I mean, that's really our biggest equity, difference here. And Knowledge Works assured us that they would never push a mission or a vision or a whatever on us. It's our own personalized learning path. They are helping with it, but they will never push anything upon us that we as a community and school are not comfortable with. So we cleared the air on there that's, even though their organization is promoting some things that we don't have an issue with right now, that doesn't mean that we're going to be forced into that as a school district. And they said that both now and for the foreseeable future. But any other questions on personalized competency-based learning?
If not, thank you. That's the end of your,
That's the end of my report.
are we short in the kitchen right now?
Are we short in the kitchen right now? Not that I'm aware of.
I didn't know. if you-
She was there yesterday.
Was she?
All right, are there committee reports? Or is there a report that committees are going to meet, or who's behind, who needs to meet? I haven't had a
No, well,
meeting.
we'll start getting negotiation committee reports from when you negotiate. I don't know that there are committees left that haven't met yet this year. I just go back and double check.
And staffing update?
As of right now, no change from our last school board meeting.
All right. With that, we'll get into the minutes and financial reports. So in your packet, there are minutes from February the 9th, our regular meeting, and our special on February 17th and special on February 23rd. Those were in your packet. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of those 3 board meetings? Or were there changes that we need to note? If not, is there a motion to approve?
I make the motion to approve it.
Schmitz moves to approve the minutes of the meetings as in the packet. Is there a second?
No, second.
Thorpe seconds. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion carries. Next, we'll review the reconciliation, balance sheet, and revenue and expense reports together. Those were in your packet. April, are there any comments or anything you'd like to highlight?
Nope, pretty much the same stuff that I had noted last month about the reasons of going over budget and under budget. And along the financial reports, also in the school board packet area, you saw that I had posted a proposed preliminary budget for the 21-22 school year with highlights. If you guys want to look those over and let me know if you have any questions so we can begin discussion on all of that stuff.
April, where was that?
So if you go to the board, packet, it should be a file that, just like our board packet file, it should say board or budget highlights, and then it should have another one that says 2021.
When did you post those?
Yesterday. Let me see if I can pull it up and I can share it.
I didn't see them yesterday, but I was on earlier in the day, so. All right, while she's looking for that, were there any questions of that anyone noted as they were reviewing the financial reports? Any questions? All right, now April has up, that's what our school board information packet section looks like. And I don't think those 2 items were there when I was there yesterday morning, but if you go in there, you can see the preliminary budget and like, what is it, a 6 or 8 page highlight with some text on it, I believe.
Yep,
Okay.
this kind of gives us
And
some
then-
highlights of what we're looking at.
Okay, so please review that, because look, we're gonna get done well before 8:30 here, so you'll have time to go look at that right away after this meeting. All right, We have before us the reconciliation, balance sheet, and revenue and expense reports. Is there a motion to approve those three reports as presented in our packet?
I'll make a motion.
Rosendahl moves to accept those financial reports. Is there a second? Nagel seconds. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Any questions or discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries. Financial reports are approved. And finally, the approval of bills. I don't believe we received anything late, so what was in your packet is what we have before us to approve. Any questions or comments on those bills to be paid? If not, is there a motion to approve the bills as presented?
Make a motion.
Schmitz moves to approve the bills. Is there a second? Nagel seconds. Is there any discussion? Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries and the bills are approved. I want to quickly revisit April 7th and 8th, the consensus that we had to have interviews on the 7th and 8th. I think when we spoke to Dakota Leadership Solutions, they suggested that we not have more than 2 interviews in a day. We may end up and have only 2. Is anyone opposed to having a 3rd interview in a single day, spread 2 hours apart?
I can move to the 6th. I don't have a problem doing when the school's out. The interview shouldn't be distracted by that either. I think we need a 5th one. We gotta go to that Tuesday, maybe in the afternoon. I can't get 3 in a day. Basically wipe off the day. So if we need an extra day, it's nice to have school in session, but we wouldn't want to have that distracting when we're doing the interview anyway.
Consensus? Preferred?
I agree with not having 3 in a day.
Okay. Okay, so we would try to, and we may only have 4. We may only have 3, but if we,
I think we'd have to that Tuesday afternoon.
all right, we'll shoot for the 7th and 8th, and then a full morning, and then of course we'd have to have a early afternoon board meeting for the nuts and bolts then in the afternoon. But if we need a 5th, I'd try for, or perhaps even the evening of the 6th. We'll see. Okay. I know, but everything, there's going to be something in every evening. Notice why we meet at 7 in the morning, right?
The discussion with Dr. Dukeshire was that the tours would be before the interviews, but if you're gonna do interviews at 8, I would think that the tours would be after, which would be okay too, because then we're not so time constrained that if it goes a little bit longer than an hour and a half, that's not a major challenge. Agree that the tours will be after interviews?
That's the
Okay.
way I recall doing it in the past.
Okay.
Okay. All right, I will communicate that with Dr. Dukeshire. For the good of the order, I would like to announce that in reading, I kind of had a hint of this, but in reading the Southeast Region Career and Tech Center board minutes from the most recent meeting, that longtime director, Mr. Junior, has announced his retirement. And so they also have a search underway for a new director of the Southeast Region Career and Tech Center. So our thanks to Mr. Rude Jr. for all of his years of leadership and all of the benefits that we've enjoyed with the Career Tech Center, and best of wishes to the Career Tech Center in their search for an excellent new director. With that, our future meeting, unless anybody else has anything you'd like to bring forward, our future meetings, a special meeting Tuesday, March the 30th. By that time, you should have received and reviewed number of excellent qualified candidates for our new superintendent. And our regular meeting Tuesday, April 13th, by which time we should have that person hired.
I'll just add, Mr. Bean is actually part of the search process with the SRCTC. You and one other principal, right?
Mr. Stringy from Winder, our
Yes.
next meeting at 9, so start the process.
And I want to back up just for a minute. I think I included in the memo about this, the schedule for the superintendent search that Dakota Leadership Solutions has offered, and they have done this at other districts where they're conducting the search. They've offered to actually do the negotiating on our behalf. So the board would meet together with Dakota Leadership Solutions and say, well, here's what we're thinking in terms of salary, and giving them a range. And then that person representing us, the Dakota leadership person representing us, and a particular benefit to that would be, as opposed to say me being the negotiator, if I were to go in and negotiate with our new superintendent, Craig, and he and I really get into it across the table and start our relationship on a negative note in that way, this way they can be that sort of bad guy or tough guy. Do you have thoughts about that after having gone through?
That's the same process that I went through. I negotiated with the search consultant.
That was really appealing to me.
Really good idea.
Okay, all right, so consensus on that. If someone feels differently, let me know at another time, but that was appealing to me. So with that, thank you for your diligent work this morning. This is a new record for this school year, perhaps. Okay, I'll adjourn the meeting at 8:16, 15 on my iPad.